If I told you there are no ghosts at the Grand is somehow Ghostbusters, House Flipper, and a supernatural mystery game all at once, I would expect for you to be just as confused as to how that would play as I was. But I spent some time with a short demo that the company passed around recently and came out with a clear understanding that I didn't have an exact understanding still, but some of it did come together. Speaking of coming together, subscribe and comment. As you guys know, we're always throwing some cool stuff to those who've subscribed and commented in the videos. I always want to bring people together to discuss some games. Starting out, Chris David, the main character, isn't exactly lucky. He's an American who stumbles into ownership of the Grand, a crumbling seaside hotel in an English village that feels more cursed inheritance than overall windfall. He's got 30 days and 30 nights to drag the place back up from ruin, though the real deadline seems to be a bit less about plaster and wallpaper and fixing rooms and more about whatever shadowy thing is waiting to claim him or the building or the island if he fails. Along the way, Chris gets stuck with some pretty unusual company, a talking cat named Mr. Bones, sadly no relation to that kick-ass Saturn game, and a chatty Scottish paintbrush, Robert C. McBrushy, who doubles as both tool guide and comic relief, and possibly in the full game, a complete disaster. But I'll get to that. And getting to that won't happen until around 2026, where it's hitting PC and Xbox. This is also Game Pass included. So I'm sure you'll understand a bit of my disappointment that a couple minutes into the demo, you leave the Grand. That's right. You spend the rest of the demo on a mysterious island. It probably makes sense within the game, but here I was thinking, are there any ghosts at the Grand? Instead, shuttled off to an island after the boat crashes aside it, and the rest of the game plays out there. This is most likely a couple hours into the game. Gameplay is really split into two halves and then almost another two from there, and the duct tape holding everything together is your toolkit of items. You've got your vacuums, your power sprayers, sandblasters, a multitude of items that shift their use not only depending on if you switch their mode, like the vacuum from suck to blow, but also where you are. Knock down a wall, maybe find a puzzle, a secret door, a memory bubble where you replay a moment of the hotel's grim past, or in my case, the island. It's more about mood than measurement, which works because the game doesn't let you really get comfortable at any one time. It's switching up the gameplay most of the time, and it actually seemed to hit for what I got to play. It also does prove that the world here is going to be bigger than just the hotel. It's going to be the island itself and traveling around it. I mean, at some point I ended up getting onto a little Vespa scooter and driving it down the streets. The game started me out pretty quickly with fixing a smashed boat, investigating a mystery on the island, listening to some kind of mysterious recording that appears to be from years prior by using my tools to restore a room to the exact representation of what it was when the message was recorded, and then I was able to see the full scene. Visually, everything's displayed quite well. It doesn't shoot for realism. It's a stylized clay-like, somewhere between Dear Esther and more detailed Telltale games. Interiors rot in layers, peeling wallpaper exposes history, ghost trails, and occasionally just bad taste from everybody else. The lighting sells the actual game world pretty well. Daytime looks muted and almost slightly whimsical, while nighttime folds over with spectral shadows, glowing dust motes, and chairs brought in legs like you've been mainlining David Cronenberg movies. It's equal parts cozy and a bit uncanny, a seaside postcard smudged with just a bit of Sea of Thieves to make it look, in particular, a certain way. But even visually, it was always changing things up a bit. At the end of the demo, I had to rush to safety and was chased by those spiders that were also chairs. And that may sound creepy, and it may not make sense until you think about how the game and its coverage of repairing this old hotel and the items you use to actually do it sort of hit the mark. Now, that being said, frame rate, while usually high, also had a lot of variability. And more importantly, the game has a very unique head bob animation system that I didn't have any option to turn off. It's oddly not that pronounced. It's just that it's as if the character settled into each step. And I thought it was stutter within the game engine somehow induced by just different movement. But it's mostly simply how the game displays that movement. It's a bit odd, and I gotta say, I actually didn't like that part of it, but it's over the top, which the game is trying to deliver. Hopefully there's the ability to tone that down later. Speaking of tones, let's talk a little bit about the audio. Audibly, the game does have a lot going for it. The aforementioned comedic AI and lo-fi banter of Scotty's drunk cousin consistently telling you you're dumb when you screw up a puzzle, but also walking you through smashing, spraying, and vacuuming. The voice actor and acting there is more casual than dramatic, the kind of delivery where a companion might drop lore like a mini-city tour, and then the entire game drops into a country song 30 seconds later. And the full game doing this is going to be an interesting take on part here because there is a lot of music. Just in that short demo, I heard two different songs that played as I did different things. It's sort of a montage kind of feel, a moment overlaying the visuals, as well as the vocabulary that was occurring at that particular time. One of the songs was playing and I could hear the other character talking, and I was moving around while doing so. The other replaced the actual words themselves and was more about the emotion of a discussion. We'll just have to see how that hits. One part I got to give him a huge kudo on is animation that's tied in particular to the main character. So when he's talking, he moves his hands a great deal. Now, normally you would see some character talk like this and I would discuss it in the graphics, but it's so directly tied to the audio because that's where it works and I think it fits. I do like the idea of this, and where at times when the characters talk and you can see their hands, something about that really doesn't end up translating to a lot of games. Even huge expansive titles don't do that kind of thing, leaving the audio parts, especially discussion moments, particularly clinical, like it's just a camera there. Here, it's not just a camera. It's not the same. You see the character make particular gestures or show their frustration consistently. Now, in the long term, I could see this might become a bit problematic, or at least bothersome to some players, seeing these characters consistently move around and talk with their hands like this, but I actually liked it. In the short amount of time I spent with the demo, it worked. One thing I don't know if it'll work, and the big issue I can see happening to the game here, is the game's version of friggin' Microsoft Clippy. If that character's Chapin hides the entire game, it's going to be really frustrating, because if he isn't outright abusing you, he's randomly interrupting your work with his interludes and comments. However, and I do want to point this out, there's one bright spot. During an investigation I did inside the bunker, a mini puzzle to unlock some recorded conversations supernaturally imprinted onto the bunker's walls, it was then that, just for the briefest of moments, that annoying tool's AI sense of mystery and unease matched my own. It's here where he went from occasionally irritating companion to interested co-host, a Scottish and American version of BuzzFeed Mysteries, now Watcher on YouTube, where Shane and Ryan were in some bunker somewhere, and it was me and him. Unfortunately, pretty quickly, he switched back. It's a risky mix, and much of the game is. On one hand, it's refreshingly strange and confident in its weirdness, and it should be, as Power Washing Simulator is massively popular, and just the overall genre with House Flipper is as well. This shared toolset ties the modes together in a way that feels natural, like you're inhabiting one coherent system instead of four sort of stitched together across time and location. However, I could feel like the genre jumps here could whiplash some players. The comedy around the sentient tool AI, it's actually pretty awesome. The random musical interludes works well enough, but think about it like this. These overlays of presentation are big enough that if you dislike the random music or the style or that style of comedy, then that entire situation, that entire moment is framed inside it and can end up pushing a gamer away. I can say this, rolling out of the game and back into the demo to play again, it's one of the only games in a long time that I feel pretty damn surprised when I'm playing it. I got to paint some walls, repair some broken furniture, set up a room. I figured out a time-traveling puzzle that involved some kind of supernatural eavesdropping, engaged in a back-and-forth yakathon with a sentient multi-tool, and then had two musical numbers and a boat crash. And I did enjoy all of that, no matter how short. If it's anything, it's a lot of things. Still, in one of the rare indie projects out there, it does feel unpredictable. A fixer-upper sim that morphs into a ghost story, then a punk rock album possibly, then a chase scene with furniture on legs. If it holds it together, it could be a big surprise when it comes out. But there is a lot going on here. It's an awkward dinner guest who suddenly busts into song halfway throughout the meal, and you don't know whether to laugh, join in, or just get up and leave. And that uncertainty is exactly why I think it's worth keeping an eye on. If you want to keep an eye on games, subscribe to the channel, comment. We'll be throwing some stuff to the people who do so. More videos coming your way this week, as well as a podcast every single Friday. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.